Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. The seventh day of Diddy's federal trial was already spiraling into chaos when something happened that no one saw coming. Joe Rogan, comedian, commentator, and host of the most downloaded podcast in the world, walked through the courtroom doors. Just a man carrying a small black notebook and a memory full of disturbing truths. What began as speculative commentary on his podcast had now taken a serious turn. Joe Rogan was here to testify under oath. And what he revealed wasn't gossip, it was first-hand experience, sharp observation, and a trail of receipts that went far beyond clickbait headlines. As he began to speak, it was clear this wasn't just a celebrity trial anymore. This was the unraveling of an entire system. And Joe Rogan had just taken the stand to set the record straight. The Diddy trial had kicked off with an electric buzz in the air, the press gallery packed, and rumors swirling like wildfire. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what followed. When Joe Rogan, comedian, UFC commentator, and host of the most-watched podcast in the world, walked into the courtroom as a surprise witness, it wasn't a publicity stunt, it was a full-throttle intervention. And Rogan didn't come empty-handed. Wearing a dark gray blazer and jeans, he cut a casual but sharply focused figure as he approached the stand. The room fell into a stunned silence. No cameras were allowed inside, but court sketch artists scrambled to capture every expression, every subtle movement, as the tension thickened and the air turned electric with anticipation. Diddy's defense team looked baffled. The judge leaned forward and asked Rogan to state his name and profession.
It's just amazing how many people on the Diddy party list that are supporting Kamala, too.
Yeah, seriously. Insane.
Publicly, openly, all in.
Sean Combs is on trial for his life in New York, accused of sex trafficking and racketeering. But he has support. I go over who's showing up in court to back the rap mogul as he defends himself. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Every day, Sean Combs walks into federal court in a sweater and slacks and listens to testimony about his freak-offs and alleged criminal, violent behavior. And as he listens to this and is fighting for his life, there are people in court supporting him. On the first day of his trial, many of Combs' family members were there. His daughters and his mother, Janice Combs, she was also there. His sons were also in court. And there's one person who's been at every court appearance for Sean Combs, and he's also attending the trial each day. He's Combs' best friend, Charlucci Finn.
As the judge ordered those recordings to be officially logged into evidence, Rogan delivered a statement that made every juror sit up straighter. I've had Navy SEALs on my show. I've interviewed conspiracy theorists, professors, even CIA whistleblowers, and I have never heard anything this disturbing come from the lips of people so high up in entertainment. He turned slightly toward Diddy, locking eyes for a brief moment, and finished his statement with quiet fury. This isn't just celebrity gossip. This is systemic abuse hiding behind platinum records and red carpet smiles. As Rogan settled deeper into his testimony, the court granted him permission to recount specific stories shared on his podcast over the years. He explained that he had been connecting the dots, tracing a disturbing pattern as far back as 2018. One of my early guests, Rogan recalled, was a tour manager for a popular R&B act. He originally came on to discuss the darker realities of the music industry, drug culture, pay-for-play schemes, endless NDAs. But during a break, off the record, he told me something entirely different. He said Diddy's parties weren't just indulgent, they were dangerous. Rogan emphasized that many of these unsettling revelations never made the final cut of his show. People were scared, he said. One guest asked me to blur his voice, distort his name, even requested that we record his segment in a remote cabin off the grid.
Really supporting Sean Combs in the courtroom. I want to bring in Elizabeth Milner. She is a reporter here at Law and Crime, and she is in the courtroom every day. She's been to every Sean Combs hearing throughout this case. So Elizabeth, tell me, who are you seeing? Let's start at the very, very beginning. Day one, the daughters of Sean Combs were there. His mom, Janice, was there. So you tell me who else we saw back on day one show up to support Sean Combs.
There were a lot of
supporters of Sean Combs, aka Diddy, aka PD, P Diddy, Love, just all the different names that he has. But it was a pretty stacked courtroom, especially on day one, which we know they were finalizing the jury that day, but also opening statements happened that day. So we had everyone from Mark Garagos, Karen Agnifilo, who's married to Mark Agnifilo. Lil Rod was in the courtroom, not to necessarily support Diddy or anything like that, but he was inside that courtroom, inside the gallery on day one. Doug Wigder was in the courtroom. He represents Cassie, not on Diddy's side necessarily, but as far as his supporters specifically, definitely a lot of family members, including his son or adopted son, Quincy Brown, his son, Justin Combs, Christian Combs, the twins, Delilah and Jesse. Chance Combs was there. Chance's mother was there. Janice Combs, again, Diddy's mother was there. I didn't see Diddy's sister Keisha on day one or even throughout the first week of trial, not necessarily sure why. But we also saw another mother of Diddy's children, and that being Dana Tran, who is the mother of Diddy's youngest daughter named Love. And then we saw Kim Porter's best friend.
He then brought up another instance, a producer who had been invited to a Diddy-hosted event in 2015. Rogan's tone darkened. That producer described the night like stepping into a psychological experiment, high-profile guests, strange rituals, no phones, no exit until it was over. He told me what he saw there left him shaking, cameras hidden in smoke detectors, people slipping things into drinks, and A-list celebrities pretending not to notice. He told me what he saw there left him shaking, cameras hidden in smoke detectors, people slipping things into drinks, and A-list celebrities pretending not to notice. Joe Rogan read directly from notes he had taken during that off-air interview. I saw people being filmed against their will, and Diddy called it leverage. The courtroom held its breath. The judge paused and asked Rogan whether these claims had been verified. Rogan clarified carefully. Many were anecdotal, but too many lined up to ignore. These weren't just rumors passed in hallways. These were detailed accounts with specific timelines, locations, and multiple people describing the same disturbing behaviors. He then explained how he had maintained a private archive of these unaired stories, protected by NDAs. He had crafted with the help of legal advisors. I didn't want to be sued into oblivion, Rogan said plainly, but I also didn't want this stuff buried. Joe Rogan read directly from notes he had taken during that off-air interview. I saw people being filmed against their will, and Diddy called it leverage. As the courtroom emptied for recess, the weight of Rogan's words lingered like smoke in the air. This wasn't just testimony, it was a turning point. A moment when the veil over the entertainment industry was forcefully pulled back, and names once thought untouchable were now etched into something far more serious than gossip columns.
Was one of the caregivers of actually the twins. And so he had a pretty stacked support system as far as family and loved ones go, as well as one of his childhood friends that he's known, I think, since high school, from what I can understand, named Charlucci. He's been inside that courtroom for all the hearings, every single day of trial so far. And so he had a lot of supporters definitely on day one and for sure on day two too.
Now I want to talk about let's talk about Charlucci Finney first. He is the best friend of Sean Combs, and he's been there every day. And you said now that he's been there for all the pretrial hearings too, right?
Yeah, he's been there for a lot of the pretrial hearings. I always was wondering who was the guy wearing the free puff sweatshirt and the free puff hat. And, you know, he was allowed to do that during the pretrial hearing because there's no jury, no way that could be prejudicial. So he was able to do it. However, once trial comes, he had to turn the sweatshirt inside out. But he has been very supportive of Diddy throughout a lot of the pretrial hearings, throughout the trial, as somebody who's essentially always in the courtroom, surprisingly always writing down notes too, and just kind of being that support system for Diddy. But he is there essentially every day so far.
So the daughters, it's my understanding, we'd spoken about this before, there were times when they left during some of the testimony, when there was talk about the freak offs and stuff like that. I mean, you can understand that. My God, like, who wants to hear about their dad taking part in this stuff? They're women, they're, young.
Joseph James Rogan, he said calmly, "I'm the host of the Joe Rogan Experience." He didn't waste time. "I'm not here to gossip," he began. "I'm here because I've been given first-hand accounts from guests on my show accounts that connect deeply to what's happening in this courtroom. I also have recordings. And yes, I've kept them secure." A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. In that moment, Rogan was no longer just a public figure. He was being treated like a whistleblower. He began to speak about the interviews he had conducted over the years with ex-bodyguards, former label executives, and industry insiders. A lot of them were too scared to speak on the record, he said. So they came to me not as a judge, not as a lawyer, but as someone who wouldn't cut the tape when truth got uncomfortable. Then Rogan dropped the first bombshell. Back in 2023, I had a guest on back in 2023. Rogan continued, his voice steady but heavy. A former member of a security detail for a list artist, off air. He confided something that shook me. He said Diddy had files, physical evidence, videos, recordings, all stored on a private server. The server was kept in a bunker-like room at his Miami compound. He paused for a moment before adding, and what's more chilling is this. He claimed that Jay-Z, LeBron James, and other major public figures knew about the so-called freak-offs. Not necessarily that they participated, but they were aware. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Diddy looked visibly disturbed. His lawyers quickly objected, but the judge overruled them. Rogan pressed on. He began detailing what that guest had witnessed firsthand. He described those events not as parties, Rogan said, but as rituals. Phones were confiscated. Guests were blindfolded. Everything was controlled. The term freak-off wasn't slang. It was code. Inside the industry, everyone knew what it meant. And everyone, Rogan said, acted like it was normal. The prosecution then asked if he had brought any recordings. Rogan nodded. I submitted excerpts to the DA's office before coming here, he confirmed. They contain audio of unnamed insiders discussing these events, details that align with what's being alleged in this courtroom. Some of the voices have already been verified by forensic audio teams,